me right here. Take a walk down the old street. See. We're moving to another side now. Wow. Edinburgh tour. It's the old Scottish Parliament. And I'm taking a walk down to another area. Amazing, man.
I don't know. Did you see with it? Yeah.
Watch where you're walking on the Royal Mile. This over here marks the spot where the gallows once stood before Edinburgh Castle. Site of the last public execution in Edinburgh, as the plaque says over there. Well, the gallows, they were designed by this man, Deacon Brodie. Have you heard then perhaps of Jekyll?
Oh, it's quite an amazing place as well.
And the information's
started moving in. Underneath Southbridge you'd have gangs from as close as Edinburgh, as far away as London, and even as scary as Glasgow, all conducting their business underground. Unfortunately, along with criminals, you would have a large portion of Edinburgh's homeless population. taking refuge under the bridge. As you can imagine, this did not mix well. Now, I mentioned body snatchers earlier. In the 18th century, Edinburgh University was a leading medical institution, and they needed bodies to practice on, to demonstrate on in their lecture theatres. However, there was a body shortage in the 18th century, so some people turned to less than legal ways of acquiring bodies. Lots of people started digging up freshly buried bodies, taking them to the university, but the fresher the was, the more the body was worth. And so some people began murdering for money. The most famous of these people, of course, are Burke and Hare, infamous Irish serial killers who lived in the Royal Mile, lured their victims into their inn, then delivered the bodies to the university. If anyone is interested in Burke and Hare, then once Burke was caught, his skin was peeled from his body and made into book covers for books at the university. And you can actually still see these book covers at Surgeons Museum, which is just along the street. But there was a serial killer whose hunting ground was the underground vaults we are about to go into. Margaret Docherty. Now, Margaret Docherty was a particularly gruesome serial killer. She'd come down to the vaults, she'd look for particularly mothers and their children, small families taking shelter underneath the vaults. She'd get the mum very, very drunk, and while she was very, very drunk, she would steal away the child and take them to a separate vault. The vaults are very dark, very soundproof, as you can see, so it's very easy to get away with stuff down in the vaults. Once the child is at the vault, she'd smother them with a pillow. Very effective way of murder, because when it was taken to the university, there was then no sign of foul play. So it didn't look as if these children had been murdered. And of course, they were worth a lot of money. Some say the spirits of the children haunt the far end of the vaults, although there are a couple of theories that I'll go through once we're in there about who those children are, whether they're Margaret Docherty's victims or someone else. Now, what I'll do now is take you through. I'll introduce you to a couple of my favourite spirits, and then I'll let you guys have 5 minutes to explore the vaults for yourself. Unfortunately, due to the current plague, we do have a limited time down here, so I'll let you know when we have to be out. So this way, guys, follow me. Now, if one of you just has the log here, you get there you go. Fantastic. So, before this was a bridge, this used to. Oh dear, I thought I saw something. So before, it's okay. I thought I saw something. This is hopefully a shadow. Hopefully. Now, before this was a bridge, this used to be a street. Nidri's Wine. Nidri's Wine was then knocked down and the rubble used to build the bridge. However, some of the residents were thought to have come back after they died to haunt the vaults. Now, some signs of paranormal activity that you might notice once we're in here, some very common ones, is first thing, people feel quite paranoid, sometimes emotional almost when they come in here. So have people burst into tears, things like that. Sometimes you might feel a little unwell. Do let me know if this happens, by the way, because only last week I had a man down here who didn't believe in ghosts at all, suddenly felt very, very unwell while we were down here, and then threw up, and then I had to come in after and clean it up. So if anyone does feel unwell, please let me know. The next thing people notice is that it is quite warm in here. That's quite nice. But if you feel very cold all of a sudden, very chilly, then it might be a sign that you're standing in the presence. I'll turn a blind eye, otherwise you can just have a glance in from outside if you're not feeling too brave.
Oh, sorry, I got a question. Where this water coming from? Because
the water. Yeah. Mostly rain. It's a very badly built, well, I say mostly rain. I hope it's mostly rain.
Oh, okay.
It's a very, very badly built bridge. This is why the businessmen very quickly moved out, stopped storing things down here.
Yeah.
Because they cheaped out on materials, brought a very porous stone, and so everything that's dripping through is whatever's on the pavement above. So like I said, mostly rain, but that's probably not everything that's on the pavement above, so don't worry about it.
All right.
So down in this corner of the vault, I've got a couple of interesting things. Firstly, the skylight above me leads directly onto the pavement above. When you guys come down, you can take a glance up, see people walking overhead. If you're lucky, you might catch a Scotsman in a kilt. Alright. But more interestingly, we have what is believed to be a family of spirits down in this corner. Very often behind me, in this wee alcove, people see a large, shadowy figure with a hole in his stomach. We think this is the father of the spirit family, who are believed to be the Balfours. Now, the Balfours came down to Edinburgh in the 15th century from Orkney, so they spoke Gaelic. Here down in lowland Scotland at the time, we still spoke Scots. So when these Gaelic speakers came to town, they were out about, walking, doing their business, when people overheard them speaking Gaelic, and they thought they were speaking in tongues, speaking to the devil. Very quickly they were accused of witchcraft and brought down to the face blind. Now, before I tell you the rest of the story, you need to understand a little bit about witchcraft in Scotland. Scotland held the second largest number of witches between the 14th and 17th century in all of Europe, 18,000 witches. Germany just beat us, in case you're wondering. But it's a particularly high number, especially for such a wee country. This was in part because we're a very superstitious country, but also in part to a king, King James V of Scotland. He appointed himself head witch hunter, and he wrote a book on demonology and how to capture and torture witches. So he was endorsing this witch hunting behaviour. Now, before King James, what we used to do with witches is we take them down to Norloch, where Princess Street Gardens is now. We would tie their thumb to their toes, chuck them into the loch. If they drowned, guess what?
They weren't witches.
They were innocent, exactly. And if they survived, they were a witch and they would be burned at the stake. Really couldn't win. Now, King James, he had a couple more creative ways of torturing witches. This fellow behind me, Mr. Balfour, he's a fairly calm fella. He's been known to make noises. Sometimes his shadow will move up and down the walls and the vaults. But he has the hole in his stomach because of how he was tortured. He had a cage placed in his stomach. Inside that cage, 2 rats. And outside the cage, a fire was lit. The rats had nowhere to go but through his stomach. Shearing away the whole time, the witch hunters, they're interrogating him, they're shouting at him, they're going, "Are you a witch?" And of course, he responded in Gaelic. They took this as a sign that he was a witch, that he was speaking in tongues. And they brought the rest of his family down here as well. His wife was placed on a stretcher, on a rack. She was stretched until her bones snapped really in its spot. And she was then burned at the base of Calton Hill. Now, the saddest part of the story are the 2 Balfour children. A wee boy, a wee girl. The boy had the Spanish boot. This is a metal contraption, goes around your leg, and there are holes in it which wooden pegs are hammered through. The wee girl had periwinkles. These are thumb screws. At the base of your thumb, tightened and tightened till you confess or the thumb snaps. Now, throughout their entire ordeal, they were said to be on chairs right next to each other, talking away in Gaelic. So of course they were also accused of witchcraft, found guilty and burnt at the stake. But in this vault to the next to me, when people go in, they say they feel the spirits of children playing inside the walls. They feel tugging at their coats, at their hands. Sometimes whispers, high voices, gusts of wind flying past as if 2 kids are alive and playing. Now, it could be the spirits of the Balfour children, known to be tortured in this area, or it could be, like I mentioned earlier, Margaret Docherty's victims. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to let you guys down, one group at a time. You can have a glance into the vault. If you want to stick your head through, a bit more of your head through, then do feel free, but make sure it is one group at a time. If you're feeling particularly brave, then close your eyes, hold out your hands, see if anything grabs hold. But I should warn you before we go in, Quite a few people have been here over the years, and they brought presents for the children. Let's see. So there are quite a few toys in here. You've got to keep an eye on these toys. One of the most common things I get down here is them moving by themselves. So do keep an eye out for that. My favourite toy, I went in and found him earlier, is this guy over here. Oh, there we go. I call him Boris Johnson, similar haircut. So do keep an eye on his toy. He's back in safe, but do keep an eye out for the toys if you want. So one group at a time, come down, have a wee glance. Who's first?
Let's do it.
No? Alright, fantastic. Alright, fantastic. As long as no one knocks it down. So while you guys are waiting, feel free to chat with me and Annie if you haven't already.
I'm alright.
Not please. She has been known to sometimes appear in this corner. I mean, not to freak you out, but we have had a couple of people who come out and they say they see a figure standing over there. So we don't know if it's Annie or a different lady, but whoever stands there, mostly harmless. I did once have a lady who took out her phone after she came out the vault to take a photo, and she started screaming. All of us started screaming, very quickly descended into chaos. Then turns out her phone was on selfie mode. She thought she'd seen a female figure standing in her phone.
Oh my god.
That was an interesting one. All right, see any children? Ah, good, good. Glad to hear it.
I think I'm gonna go next.
There you go. Look, your head as you're coming down. Oh, careful. And this fella over here, who I believe was put here not by a ghost but my boss, but he has his own story, but I won't spend too long. It's not too interesting. So guys, we're going to head out this way now. Thankfully for some of you. On your way out, please use the hand sanitizer again. And then it's up the stairs. There you go.
I hope I don't wake up here in the middle of the night. I'm gonna make a report to the police when I leave.
Oh, that's the superstition. If I can assure you, I've never come in the morning and come across someone lying in the vault.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think I'd be more scared of this. Okay.
back to reality.
Thank God.
Oh goodness.
So over here is the skylight we're walking under.
Oh, I see.
If you feel like a bit of fun, you're walking past, feel free to give it a tap, scare someone going underneath.
Oh.
Why not? So over there is the vaults you're in, and over here is the vault with the children's vault. Now, there are more vaults. They go all the way along this bridge. However, the guy who found them sectioned them off, sold them to the highest bidder, and now there are only two vaults of ours and one across the road, which have been left as they've been found. The rest of it renovated into pubs and clubs and such.